Hi, this is FUAD ABASOV, a broker with 𝐝𝐻ome Realty, and this is your monthly real estate statistics. Toronto's October was the quietest in nearly 25 years. Higher interest rates continue to slow down the market. We're seeing a slow decline in sales activity, but it's minimal and not unexpected for this time of year. A quieter real estate market in October is not uncommon, as it often marks the beginning of a seasonal slowdown. Many buyers and sellers prefer to make property transactions during the spring and summer months, when the weather is more favorable, and there is a perception that the market is more active. Therefore, a slowdown in October is not necessarily unexpected. So, sales are down and number of active listings is up all across GTA. However, selling prices remained higher than last year's levels. It's worth noting that the minimal decline in sales activity may indicate that the market is still relatively stable, even in the face of higher interest rates. Although some might assume that higher inventory alone can solve supply and demand imbalances, this assumption might not be accurate and is an oversimplification. The dynamics of supply and demand in real estate are influenced by various factors, and simply increasing the supply of housing does not always lead to a balanced market. Here are some reasons why. When one sells a property, it doesn't always add a unit of supply onto the market, because that seller needs to live somewhere else, which also removes a unit of supply from the market. Additionally, there are many people who don't want to sell their properties because they would lose their locked-in low interest rate and would not want to trade in for today's 6 or 7% rate. Market factors. The real estate market is affected by a range of factors beyond just the number of available properties, such as interest rates, economic conditions, demographics, and consumer confidence. These factors can have a significant impact on demand, regardless of supply levels. Location and quality. The location is always important, and quality of properties also play a crucial role in the supply and demand equation. A surplus of properties in one area may not address the demand for housing in another, especially if the locations are vastly different in terms of desirability and amenities. Affordability. It is a critical factor in the real estate market. Even with more inventory, if properties are not affordable for potential buyers, it will not necessarily lead to increased demand. Regulatory and zoning constraints. Local regulations and zoning restrictions can limit the ability to increase housing supply in certain areas. These constraints can make it challenging to meet demand through increased inventory. Speculative investment. Real estate can be influenced by speculative investment, where investors buy properties not for personal use, but for potential of future profit. This can distort market dynamics and may lead to imbalances. Of course, there are demographic changes. Changes in demographics, such as population growth, urbanization, and generational shifts, can also impact the demand for real estate, regardless of supply levels. Financing and mortgage availability. Access to financing and mortgage availability can affect the demand side of the equation. If financing becomes more difficult to obtain, it can reduce demand even if there is an ample supply of properties. This is what we're seeing right now. To address supply and demand imbalances, it often requires a comprehensive approach that considers not only increasing supply, but also addressing other factors that influence demand and affordability. This might involve policy changes, infrastructure development, and efforts to promote sustainable and balanced growth in the real estate sector. What we see today is buyers are poised to maintain their strong bargaining position while their budget remains heavily constrained by high interest rates and extremely poor affordability conditions. Most of those buyers who managed to get qualified for mortgage adopted a more cautious and defensive approach. They're more likely to take their time, thoroughly research their options, and carefully consider their choices before making a purchase. In this type of market, sellers may find it necessary to adjust their pricing and be more flexible in negotiations to attract buyers. As interest rates and affordability constraints are significant factors in buyer behavior, sellers may need to be realistic about their pricing expectations. Toronto has historically been a resilient and robust real estate market. While factors like higher interest rates can slow down activity, the long-term fundamentals of the city, such as population growth and job opportunities, can continue to drive demand for housing. And now, let's take a closer look at detached home sales in Toronto and surrounding areas. So, as we can see from the next batch of reports, the amount of new listings significantly went up compared to October of last year, the same as it was in September of last year. In Toronto, an average selling price was $1.7 million. The amount of new listings went up by 27%. The amount of sold properties went down by 1%. Average selling price compared to last year is up by 6%. It takes on average 17 days for a detached home to be sold in Toronto today. In Vaughan, the amount of new listings went up by 48%. The amount of sold properties also went up by 7.8%. Average selling price of detached home in Vaughan today is $1.72 million, the same as it was in October of last year. It takes on average 18 days for a detached home to be sold in Vaughan. Compared to last October, the amount of new listings in Richmond Hill went up by 94%. The amount of sold properties also went up by 46%. Average selling price is almost the same as in October of last year and sitting at $1.85 million. It takes on average 20 days for a detached home to be sold in Richmond Hill today. In Mississauga, number of new listings went up 38%. The amount of sold properties also went up by 15%. Average selling price went up compared to October by 13% and is sitting at $1.56 million. On average, it takes 16 days for a detached home to be sold in Mississauga today. In Markham, average selling price of a detached home in October was $1.72 million. Same as it was October of last year. The amount of new listings went up by 50%. The amount of sold properties went up by 7%. On average, it takes 16 days for a detached home to be sold in Markham today. In Newmarket, an average selling price of a detached home slightly went up compared to September and is sitting today at $1.28 million, almost 4% increase compared to October of last year. The number of new listings went up by 9.6%. The amount of sold properties went down by 37%. It takes on average 19 days for a detached home to be sold in Newmarket today. In Aurora, an average selling price of a detached home compared to September went slightly up and is sitting at $1.71 million, 7.7% increase compared to October of last year. The amount of new listings went up almost 100% compared to last October. The number of sales went down by 14.7%. It takes on average 16 days for a detached home to be sold in Aurora today. In Innisfil, an average selling price of a detached home went up and is sitting at $1.07 million, 20% increase in price compared to October of last year. The number of new listings went down by 6%. The amount of sales also went down by 57% compared to last October. On average, it takes almost 1 month for a detached home to be sold in Innisfil today. Although the number of new listings compared to last October in King City went up by almost 110%, the average selling price went up compared to September and is sitting at $2.73 million, almost 3% increase compared to October of last year. The number of sales went down by 40%. On average, it takes almost 38 days for a detached home to be sold in King City today. An average selling price of a detached home in Bradford in October was $1.18 million, slight increase compared to September, almost 8% increase compared to October of last year. The number of new listings went up by almost 60%. The number of sales went down by 26%. On average, it takes 31 days for a detached home to be sold in Bradford today. In Milton, an average selling price of a detached home in October was $1.28 million, almost 2% increase compared to October of last year. The number of new listings went up by 23%. The number of sales went down by 12%. On average, it takes 26 days for a detached home to be sold in Milton today. In Stoufville, the number of new listings compared to last October went up by 20%. The number of sold properties also went up by 40%. An average selling price compared to last October is up by 10.6% and is at $1.5 million. On average, it takes 24 days for a detached home to be sold in Stoufville today. In Barrie, an average selling price of a detached home compared to September went down to $818,000. The price did not change compared to October of last year. The number of new listings went down by 11%. The number of sold properties also went down by 58%. On average, it takes 25 days for a detached home to be sold in Barrie today. It is important to note that real estate markets can vary significantly by location, and the dynamics may not apply uniformly everywhere. Additionally, market conditions change fast, so staying informed and adaptable is key for both buyers and sellers in any real estate market. Working with an expert real estate agent is extremely valuable in navigating today's complex market. When thinking of buying or selling, give me a call. I can provide insights, negotiate on your behalf, and help streamline the home buying and selling process. If you'd like to receive your own personalized sales report about home sales in your neighborhood, please call me at 647-801-3401 or email me at sold@fuadhomes.com. Thanks for watching and see you next month.